Greetings and salutations from behind the Wasatch Curtain, folks. We're here at a press conference at the Utah Lake shoreline. We have some folks here with some signs talking about "Don't Pave Utah." We have a number of speakers here. We also have one of the elders of the Oklevueha Native American Church, one of the co-founders, James Flaming Eagle Mooney, who is, as you can see in the background, making smoke with the prayer pipe.
To have a sign behind us. Yeah. Or even one on each side would be great. Whatever visual you can do.
Oh.
Yeah. He's ready.
Take it on, brother. You got it.
Oh, my goodness.
Hey guys, bald eagle. Good side. Sorry, I know I should be careful.
There is a bald eagle flying right there. I don't know if you can see it on the camera or not. Sorry, the folks just came around with sage. They're smudging and cleansing and blessing this ceremony in a traditional Native American way.
It definitely is a good omen. Bald eagle flying over.
That bald eagle has just completely circled the crowd here. Very beautiful sight. All right, folks, can you give me a 1 if the sound is okay?
Actually, that windbreak is really nice. Thank you.
Let me know if the wind noise gets too bad. I do have a mic I can plug in if necessary.
All right, everybody. Thank you for coming. Welcome. I think we're ready to get started now that my stream's up. So my name is Whit Krogh. I'm one of the attorneys for Professor Ben Abbott. I have here too my co-counsel, Adam Alba, who's helping with the representation. And as you may have heard, we filed today a response to the complaint filed by Lake Restoration Solutions.
Okay, let me get this mic on. We'll see how that does.
Public document. You're welcome to look at it to see kind of a full rundown of our responses and arguments. But I think there are a couple of points that really should be reiterated here. And if I'm being honest, it really comes down to one point that needs to be reiterated here: the freedom of speech. The freedom of speech is so fundamental to our society and to our government. And it is at its strongest, broadest, when we're talking about issues of public concern.
Does that help?
Now, what we have here, folks, is an issue of public concern. LRS wants to dredge the lake. Essentially, they want to dig up portions of the lake bed, use the fill to create artificial islands in the lake, some of which will be privatized, developed, and sold for profit. Now, Professor Abbott is an ecosystems ecologist who has spent his professional career studying the very issues that are at play in the health and well-being of Utah Lake. And he, unsurprisingly,
Does the plug-in of the mic help?
So he's been speaking out, using his expertise, trying to tell people this is a bad idea. It could have huge consequences for the environment and for the general ecosystem of this area. He's been talking to the public. He's been talking to legislators, members of the governor's cabinet.
Can you guys hear with the mic
municipal
plugged in?
councils. He's been trying to be active on this issue. And LRS was unhappy with that situation and has filed what we say is a slap suit against Professor Abbott. And I want to be careful about making sure that I get the language right, because not only have they sued Professor Abbott for $3 million in damages, but they have also asked for a court order that will order Professor Abbott to immediately cease and desist from making any further derogatory, misleading, or false statements about lake restoration. So essentially they are trying to
I'll
get
try to move
Professor Abbott
spots.
to stop talking, to stop saying derogatory comments about them and about their project. So, as I said, this is an issue of huge public concern. Now, we think that everything Professor Abbott said was true or substantially true. And that's really the standard that we're talking about when we're talking about defamation. Substantially true. And this morning we filed discovery requests. This morning to get more information to enable us to prove that what Professor Abbott said was true. But either way, what Professor Abbott said was privileged. Professor Abbott was speaking in good faith on a matter of public concern. And under our Constitution and the constitutional guarantees of both the United States Constitution and the Utah Constitution, what Professor Abbott said is fully protected, whether he was right or wrong. The marketplace of ideas is sometimes messy. It sometimes causes people to have hurt feelings. But our society, our Constitution, our structure of government has decided that the free exchange of ideas is important enough to allow those messy things and to allow those hurt feelings. So we are concerned. I personally am concerned about what this case might do to our freedoms of speech and, more importantly, to the public's willingness to engage in it. If we are to preserve the public's right and the public's courage to speak out on public issues, we cannot let LRS weaponize the judicial system to silence or even discourage critics. I have serious concerns about the precedent that this case might set and the chilling effect that it might have on our right as citizens to engage in the processes of government. So we are fighting this lawsuit, and we intend to fight it every single step of the way. In the meantime, I urge you to keep speaking out fully and without fear on issues of public concern, including the issues surrounding the preservation and management of Utah Lake. It's Witt, W-H-I-T. My last name is Krogh, K-R-O-G-U-E.
And your title?
I'm the attorney for Professor Abbott.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Isabella Arago, and I'm a grad student at BYU and studying environmental science and sustainability. And I've been asked to speak on behalf of Mary Murdoch-Meyer, Chief Executive of the Timpanogos Nation. She was unable to be with us today, unfortunately, but she wished me to read these words to you. She said, "I'm sorry I couldn't be here this morning. Our house has been infected with COVID, and it would be irresponsible of me to expose all of you. The main topic I would like to stress is Utah Lake holds great value, not only to us, the Timpanogos, but to all surrounding communities. Water is a life source we cannot live without. This lake sustained our people for many generations. Water to drink, fish to eat, a place for ceremony and prayer. When the pioneers came, they used its abundance to help in their survival. This lake holds historic meaning to all of us. The lake needs to be restored to its natural beauty. Its life-giving qualities must be preserved for future generations. The damage that has been done can be repaired. The EPA and Army Corps of Engineers will do their studies and determine the feasibility of the project suggested. But we, as people of this state, have a voice and must speak out. This historic, sacred lake must survive. Our children need to be able to sit on its banks with parents and grandparents and remember that without this lake, our history wouldn't be what it is. To forget our history is to forget those that came before us. Utah Lake is a major part of that history. We must protect Utah Lake for future generations."
I see a lot of folks here. I'll pan the crowd.
My name is Andrew South. I'm a professor of civil construction engineering at Brigham Young University. And I'm here to talk a little bit about the delivery mechanism, mega projects, project state development project to create nearly 20,000 acres of artificial islands in the center of Utah Lake, build a Salt Lake City-sized urban center in the middle, and then connect it with multiple access ways and related infrastructure is a classic example of a mega project. Mega projects are engineering projects with high financial costs, usually billions of dollars, long development timelines, years or even decades, and complex social, environmental, and economic consequences. Mega projects raise important questions. First, their tortured track record. History has consistently shown that optimism bias and even self-serving misinformation on the part of project promoters prevents an accurate estimate of financial costs and development timelines. Even more troubling, promoters are motivated to understate the negative social environmental impacts and overvalue potential project benefits. For example, what are the implications of dynamic changes on communities situated around Utah Lake shores, such as impacts on existing transportation networks and other clean water and wastewater infrastructure? The gravity of mega projects affects social and economic life well beyond the project's footprint, which is characteristically not addressed and treated during mega project development.
Can you still
They
hear?
bring a full slate of known risks, but a proportionately higher number of unknown risks. Who bears the burdens of these risks? Evidence has demonstrated that regardless of contractual risk transfer, when challenges grow large enough, it is always
Give me a
the public
1
that
if you can
supplements
hear.
that pay the cost, whether financial, environmental, or social. Unintended consequences due to future technical challenges, unforeseen negative economic or environmental impacts paid by project promoters, but paid by the generations of publics. Private participation in public development, called public-private partnerships, and there's a spectrum of PPP variants here, have become more common. In some cases, they're successful at leveraging private sector capacity to provide for public services and systems. The Island Development Project is an example of an unsolicited proposal for a PPP, or public-private partnership, which addresses complex and challenging issues, but developed in a vacuum with virtually no stakeholder engagement, offering silver bullet solutions should be looked at with great concern. When capabilities, interests, objectives, and risks are misaligned, the negative outcomes can be disastrous and even irreversible. Failures in public-private partnerships often occur as a result of a lack of process transparency, inexperience of key parties, insufficient legal frameworks or enabling legislation for the project scope, incomplete risk transfer or disproportionate transfer of risk to parties unable to bear them, and inequitable distribution of windfall profits to small groups of private sector actors when profits are developed on the backs of public assets. The absence of adequate stakeholder engagement often leads towards contested interactions and irreversible negative consequences. A critical asset like Utah Lake requires comprehensive and specific attention. Its quiet presence has shaped the interaction patterns of communities and commerce, transportation and recreation, and the sense of place for generations. Short order adoption of policy frameworks for development and fast-track consideration of an unsolicited proposal for development is worrisome. The thinly veiled labeling of a private development project on public lands as a restoration solution is exceptionally troubling. If protection of Utah Lake is a concern, and clearly it is, then a more systematic approach to identifying and understanding the lake's value, its capabilities, its challenges, and its current trajectory is an important and obvious first step. Developing a clear, comprehensive, and collaborative vision of Utah Lake is necessary. This may not happen quickly, but given the intergenerational value and consequences of how the lake is managed, and given the importance of Utah Lake to the region, it requires the time and effort. Who should undertake such a task? The people who use, enjoy, are affected by, or otherwise represent environmental, economic, and social interests in the lake. We need political champions committed to a sustainable Utah Lake who are willing to take the long view, forego short-term wins for long-term value creation to the region and its generations. One of the fallacies that surrounds a development project like the one in question is, if permits can be obtained and or the project can obtain financing from private and government sources, then the project is suitable. There's an implicit notion that clearing such hurdles in some ways validates the appropriateness of the project. Sustainable project development requires that projects be done the right way, but perhaps more importantly, that we do the right projects. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Elizabeth Currit, and I am an undergraduate student at Brigham Young University studying environmental science and sustainability. I've been asked to read this statement on behalf of George Hanley, who is a professor at BYU and is also a member of the Provo City Council. One of the more tragic environmental stories of the past century is what we have done to watersheds. In the past, we acted with limited understanding and often with naive and willful optimism that we would either cause no harm or maybe even improve life, without ever understanding fully how rivers and lakes behave. Our own behavior always seemed to set aside caution and prudence because of the bright allure of economic benefits. This is what led our forebears to believe that it was a good idea to put carp in the lake. It is what led them to believe that dumping effluents and pollution into the lake would do no harm. This is what transformed the lake from one of the most desirable sites of recreation in the valley to its very neglected state today. Fortunately, in the last 50 years, we have come into possession of much better knowledge of what makes our watersheds healthy, and the lesson is pretty simple. We can use the lake, but we will need to do so in a way that respects what it needs to get and remain healthy. This knowledge has guided us for the past few decades as we have made tremendous progress in helping our rivers and our lake recover. Unfortunately, this remarkable story of successful, ongoing restoration hasn't made good headlines. Hardly anyone seems aware of it. That is the only explanation for why proposals to dredge the entirety of the lake and to build islands to irreversibly transform the lake forever would ever have gained any traction at all. They claim it is the only thing that will save the lake. The developers and their supporters are like the surgeon who never saw a problem surgery couldn't fix. We don't need risky and violent intervention. We need to let the lake continue on its path of healing. It was one thing for our forebears to act in ignorance, but we don't have that excuse anymore. We can't afford to continue to act ignorantly or to throw caution to the wind because of the promise of financial benefits. From the perspective of our current scientific understanding of watersheds and what they really need, it is not hard to see this proposal as anything but what it is, a desperate and reckless attempt to deface this treasured resource in the guise of rescuing it. Moreover, it is an insult to the many scientists, state and federal agencies, and municipalities of this valley who have worked so hard for so long to help improve the lake. To argue that dredging and building islands is a restoration is like arguing that cosmetic surgery is nature's way of the body recovering its health. The City Council and the Mayor in Provo passed a joint resolution recently that calls on our elected officials to consider holding this and any other proposal for the lake to tougher standards of ecological health. As a member of that council, I plead for other leaders to join us. Who will step up and show leadership to be true and good stewards of our precious water resources? Who will protect the lake and protect future generations from our imprudence? I, for one, would rather step down, no matter what other good I might accomplish as a public servant, if I fail to take care of this lake as my duty requires. I plead with municipal leaders in this valley and with our governor and our state legislators to take a closer look at what this lake needs, the progress it has made, and to ensure that nothing like this project ever gets off the ground. Let us stay the course of ecological restoration of Utah Lake. Islands in the lake should be dead in the water.
Boom, chuck ya. There's that eagle out there flying for us.
No height challenge.
I'm Carolyn Jardine. I am with Conserve Utah Valley. Conserve Utah Valley is a group that formed when last year Bridalveil Falls was at risk of being developed by a private developer. We, a group of concerned neighbors, citizens, and a lot of students from the area came together to get involved in the process and stop that. We were successful with a lot of help from people who have been involved in conservation for many years, experts like Dr. Abbott, and our sheer will and grit. When we found out about the proposal for Utah Lake, this was another time where we, a group of concerned citizens and residents, couldn't sit still. We had to get involved. And we are so grateful that we have other concerned residents and citizens like Dr. Abbott who can help be a voice of science and reason to look at all of the proposals that are before us. One of our greatest concerns in this process, as we've been going through and working with people from the legislature, people from our municipal governments, our biggest concern is when this lawsuit came against Dr. Abbott, because this should also concern you. As private citizens who live in this state, we're sitting here looking at majestic Mount Timpanogos behind us, Cascade behind us, and again, majestic Utah Lake behind me. And if we cannot come forward and speak and learn and get involved in the process without the threat of a corporation being funded in part by public funds, that is very terrifying. So as a group, we have been fundraising for Dr. Abbott's defense. We encourage anyone interested in also joining this fight that is an attack on First Amendment rights to donate to this legal defense. You can find a link on our website, conserveutahvalley.org, to be able to contribute. Additionally, there are a couple of bills going through the legislature right now that are really jointly impacting Utah Lake. We are encouraging people to write letters, get involved in this process. The Utah Lake Authority doesn't need to pass right now. We need to take a pause and have responsible dialogue before something as major as the governing structure of the Utah Lake would go forward. We're asking people to write letters about the Utah Lake amendments being promoted by Representative Kevin Stratton, who has been a wonderful partner in this process. The Utah Lake amendments is something we want to have passed. It brings more transparency to the process and requires full legislative oversight of anything that happens to the lake. It's an important piece of legislation. Please write. On February 7th, Monday at 5 o'clock, we will be having a rally for Utah Lake on the south steps of the Utah Capitol, and we invite anyone who's concerned about First Amendment rights or Utah Lake to join us. Today, every legislator on the Hill received this packet from us. It includes 6,000 signatures of concerned residents who also agree with us about responsible conservation of Utah Lake. It also includes information of the science that's been done about the lake by concerned scientists, including Dr. Abbott. We urge all of our legislators to become educated about Utah Lake. As George Handley said, this is an incredibly important piece of the watershed and of the future of our state. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have a 15-minute intermission, then come back for the second hour of the press conference. Just joking. I am so grateful for these community leaders behind me who've given their time today to share their wisdom, experiences, and opinions about Utah Lake. I am also grateful for all of those here reporting on these important issues, helping the people of our communities in our beautiful state understand what is going on. I'm grateful for all of those who are tuning in from work or at home today to learn about what's happening. The biggest thing that I've learned over the past 3 weeks since I received this lawsuit is that the vast majority of our community and leaders are well-intentioned and want a bright future for Utah Valley and this lake at its center. A vibrant, free society depends on the open exchange of ideas, transparency in government, reliable information, and freedom of speech. Public disagreements and hard questions are needed at every step of big decisions about our community. I'm hard-pressed to think of a bigger decision than the future of Utah Lake. Depending on how you think of it, this is a 150 square mile decision or a 30,000 year decision, looking back to the Pleistocene origins of this lake that deposited this valley bottom. The importance of free and open debate in making decisions makes this lawsuit extremely troubling.
I have family, friends, and a professional network that have supported me and my family through this trauma. I wanted to recognize my wife, Rachel, who's here supporting me today. But I can't shake one question. What if this lawsuit had targeted someone else? Someone that didn't have those resources? What if the developers had picked a college student, a single parent, or a working class family speaking out on issues affecting their neighborhood? Do we want to live in a society where only those who can afford to retain permanent legal counsel can fully participate in public debate? Will we tolerate legal actions that dodge the hard questions and instead seek to silence citizens who are trying to understand and speak out about what is going on? The way we respond to this crisis will influence how our valley grows and what our society grows into. You may not agree with my conclusions about Utah Lake and this project, but I hope and sincerely believe that we are unified in our commitment to free speech and accountability. Our society is stronger when everyone can confidently share their views and raise concerns. Along those lines, I invite our political leaders to strengthen our state's anti-SLAPP statute so that all Utahns can confidently participate in discussions about our state's values and future. Now, let's get back to the lake. As you can tell, I'm not a legal expert, but I love this lake and grew up on its shores and have been studying it since I arrived here at BYU. Utah Lake is big geographically, but its ecological and cultural importance isn't measured in size. This desert lake is an island of water in the vast sea of land that is the Great Basin. Consequently, it is a keystone ecosystem in Western North America, supporting tens of millions of birds, fish, and other species. The lake is generous and resilient. As we heard the words of Chief Executive Meyer of the Timpanogos Nation, this lake has sustained multiple civilizations around its dynamic shoreline for more than 20,000 years. When my ancestors arrived less than 200 years ago, the bounty of the lake's fishery saved them when their crops failed. Many of us literally would not be here if it weren't for Utah Lake. Since the arrival of the pioneers, we have a mixed record with our stewardship of the lake. We introduced exotic fish to replace the native ones we overharvested. We changed the lake's hydrology to meet our immediate needs, not anticipating the feedbacks and impacts that this would have on the whole valley. Our excessive water diversions resulted in the lake drying up during the Dust Bowl, extincting one of the lake's endemic fish, the Utah Lake sculpin. These errors have one thing in common. Instead of carefully observing and learning from the lake, we assumed we could remake it in the way that we wanted. This is a story that has repeated itself thousands of times around the world. One of my favorite authors, Wendell Berry, calls this arrogant ignorance. Don't worry, only 5 more pages. Lessons that we learned from that failure in the 1930s helped us establish careful water management that led to the lake refilling. We rejected proposals to fundamentally change the lake in the 1970s and 1980s, maybe because of how strong that memory was. When the federal government tried to drill for oil under Utah Lake during the oil crisis, our community and state said no. The lake was too important to risk when other resources were available throughout the state and country. Then in 1989, when a senator proposed to create a Utah Lake Authority that would dike off Goshen Bay, crisscross the lake with highways, and build artificial islands, all in the name of comprehensive restoration and improvement of the lake, our leaders at that time had the courage to say, no, this isn't the right thing. For the past 40 years, we've taken a different path. We chose to invest in healing and legitimate ecological restoration. Rather than trying to transform the lake into something new, we decided to study and learn from the lake and begin undoing some of the mistakes we had made. Utah Lake had a huge advantage over other water bodies such as the Great Salt Lake, which had suffered permanent modifications. Though not healthy at that time, Utah Lake was at least whole and intact. Starting with investments in wastewater treatment, we began reducing the flows of excess nutrients and other pollutants to the lake. The listing of the June sucker as an endangered species accelerated these efforts, bringing diverse community partners to the table to discuss how we could restore the lake while still meeting our needs. We began removing the introduced species and testing methods for reestablishing native plants and fish. Collaborative agreements between farmers, cities, and other water users began restoring river flow to the lake, its lifeblood. These efforts are now bearing fruit. As algal blooms are declining, native species are recovering, and people across our valley are rediscovering the beauty, power, and wonder of this unique ecosystem. Right at this delicate and crucial moment of healing and recovery, we need an extra measure of caution and commitment. Utah Lake's recovery depends on sustained support, rigorous research, and robust public participation. The island developers seem to think we don't have the right to say no. They tell us they want input, but apparently only about the size, number, and shape of the islands. They tell us that the law has already been passed, or that we should wait until some point in the future to speak out, potentially when the proposal is so far along that it can't be stopped. I don't accept that argument. I'm here now, and I reserve the right to say no. Our community has the right to debate and decide whether or not this is the right direction for us and the lake that is our sacred trust. So I want all of us to take a deep breath and ask ourselves, how did we get here? What are we considering and why? What are the policies and programs that have brought us to the brink of such a bad decision? Take a look around us. Let's look at the signs around us, not the figurative signs, but the literal signs. They say, don't pave Utah Lake. Are we seriously considering throwing away decades of restoration? Our legacy, our heritage? Are we seriously considering destroying one of our state's natural wonders for short-term profits of a select few? If we allow this project to move forward, what signs are we going to need next? Don't bulldoze Mount Timpanogos. Don't sell Bridal Veil Falls. Sorry, that one's too fresh. How many times do we need to learn this lesson? I don't believe this represents who we are. Like medicine, the first rule of ecological restoration is to do no harm. What we need right now isn't islands or a bigger shovel as proposed by the new Utah Lake Authority. We need cool heads and leaders with vision and moral courage who can help our valley fulfill our sacred stewardship of this lake. Thank you very much.
Oh.
All right, thank you, everyone. If you're not frozen, you're welcome to ask questions. You can reach out some time if anybody has any.
Can we do maybe one-on-one questions?
Sure, if we want to do that after. Did you have a question?
I'm really interested in how this process actually came about. And in some ways, for having the citizens understand it. And so I would like to know, because the civil action is brought about, if I understand things correctly, you can depose people, am I correct?
Yeah, that's, yes, that's part of the process.
So I want to know what the Lieutenant Governor and Senator Meister Capel had in their mind when they forced this through our politicians. And are you willing to depose them to find out?
Now, at this point, we haven't decided who we're going to depose, but I get what you're saying, and I appreciate it. There are some really heavy questions that we need to know about how this process came about.
I'd like to know how it started.
Oh.
Does anybody else have any questions? Or should we break it up? Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't quite hear you.
Utah's anti-SLAPP legislation going to allow you to file an
question was whether Utah's anti-SLAPP statute will allow us to file an anti-SLAPP suit. So that is part of what we filed today. We filed a counterclaim under the anti-SLAPP statute. As Professor Abbott mentioned, Utah's anti-SLAPP statute is fairly narrow. Other states have some that are quite a lot broader. But what the Utah anti-SLAPP statute prevents is bringing a lawsuit to prevent or intimidate somebody from engaging in the processes of government. And the processes of government includes actions by citizens to influence the executive and legislative decisions that are made in government. So yes, it's a narrow statute, but if this doesn't qualify, I'm not sure anything does. So, anything else? Again, well, just thank you all for coming so much. Thank you. Welcome.
I've got a sign. Anybody want a sign? There you go.
Do a quick walkthrough, let y'all kind of see the crowd a little bit. See all these people that was here. In case anybody's curious as to the entirety of the message, it reminds me of a song about paving paradise.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming today.
No worries at all. I was in theater, and sound is hard.
Sound is hard, yes. I'm glad someone else understands.
Step between these two microphones. Yeah, absolutely. Is that good for you guys? That works for me.
Hey,
Yep, that's
Professor
good
Abbott,
for us.
why is Utah Lake and its preservation important to our community?
You know, this is what we call a keystone ecosystem in the Great Basin. So it's a part of the Pacific Flyway. It provides crucial ecosystem services for our community. For example, it removes over 200 tons of phosphorus every year. That's just one of the many things that it does. It's also a source of precipitation. The evaporation from Utah Lake is a source of local precipitation and regulates our climate. And then, you know, for me and so many others, it also is of great spiritual and personal importance. You know, this is a lake that has multiple times in our history saved our people from starvation and other issues. So it's hard to overstate how important this lake is to our valley.
And why does the Utah Lake Restoration Project not constitute a true restoration?
You know, thank you for that question. Restoration means to restore or go back to the way that something was before. And Utah Lake has never had artificial islands and a huge city in it. Right? This is a radical transformation of the Utah Lake ecosystem that could potentially render it permanently dependent on human active intervention to make it function. Whereas right now it is in recovery because of the legitimate restoration activities that have happened.
Thank you. One final question. What effect has the lawsuit had on your determination to speak out against the project?
You know, again, we can't know for sure what was in the minds of the people who lodged this lawsuit, but if their intent was to silence me about this, it's actually just given me an excuse to work on this full time. And also, it's been really overwhelming to see the groundswell of people in our community who are interested now, who didn't know about it before. So I'm excited and hope that this will galvanize attention in addressing Utah Lake.
So for those of us who need to know at the very beginning of how this whole thing started, how did you get the information about just what was being proposed as far as the man-made lakes and stuff?
Yeah, so I was hired at BYU as a professor in 2017. In the very next year, the first class that I taught was called Watershed Ecology. And the students had heard about this project. That was right when the law was being passed, HB 272, that allowed this to be considered. And so the students picked this out. It was a local issue, and I, of course, was interested as a watershed and earth system scientist. So we started digging in what changed in that process. Why was that law passed? We found out that, and this was public record at the time, that company had lobbied some of our politicians to pass a law that allowed, instead of the normal process, a land transfer in exchange for what they called comprehensive restoration of the lake ecosystem. That's how I got started. My students had heard about this from my university.
And when you found out what was planned, what kind of plans did you see?
So they had submitted a 250-page proposal to FFSL, Forestry, Fire, and State Lands. So we downloaded that proposal, went through, and started asking questions. Does this align with ecological restoration? That was the first place that we went, right? That was the proposal that was available. Now, the first CEOs of this company, Todd and Ben, or leads on this company, Todd and Ben Parker, were much more forthcoming and open. I participated in 2 public events with them that had panels and questions were asked. But after they left the company, things really went dark, and we didn't know what was going on.
And what company specifically was planning to put developments in the lake?
Lake Restoration Solutions. It's had a couple of different permutations of the name, Utah Lake Restoration Project, Utah Lake Arches, but the current name is Lake Restoration Solutions.
Just real quickly for me, can you just say and spell your name for me?
Yeah, my name's Ben Abbott, BENABBOTT.
You got very fast approaching deadlines, so that's why you got to kind of race. And it's Lake Restoration.
I was not
Okay, I'm giving you some history. All right. Utah, known as Utah Valley, used to be called Timpanogos. This was called Timpanogos Lake. But what? Like the Catholic fathers they call it. Yeah. Okay, because this is what the people were called. We said Timpanogos Nation. Okay, so Desert Territories, and the leader of the Desert Territories wanted this valley. So they ended up murdering almost the entire group of people. There was something like a few thousand people, and I think when they were done with it, okay, now, so what they were doing is they wanted to blot out the original people. And so a guy named Walkera, okay, Chief Walkera, this Walker.
I've been waiting for that comment.
But this choker I got on was gifted to me by his descendants. And he was not a Ute. He was a Timpanogos. But they wanted to eliminate the Timpanogos people, and so they made them so like they didn't even exist. So that's the story. And now,
But he wouldn't have said it was shown.
oh man, no, he was a Timpanogos. And you look at the Timpanogos Nation's website, it'll tell you that story, what I'm just saying. And he talks about Walkera, because Walkera was actually a Timpanogos nation. But they the influences wanted to blot out like the Timpanogos people didn't even exist, so they could take possession of us. Okay. Hey, guy.
Oh,
Good
Matakiasan.
to see you for a while. Yeah, nice to meet you too. Good to see you, bud. Man, how you feeling?
Good.
Good. You staying out of trouble?
Of course, I'm out here doing press.
Well, you're not getting caught.
Well, that's the secret, right?
There's people in there. I've learned that from you guys. All right.
So for those who are wondering, that's James Flaming Eagle Mooney. He's the co-founder of the Oklevueha Native American Church. He co-founded that with Richard, he who has the foundation Swallow of the Lakota Sioux Nation. James Mooney is of the Seminole Nation. Give me just a minute, folks.
We're having a rally.
Yeah, tell us about it. You're live right now. Tell us about it.
Well,
Tell us about the
There's
rally.
going to be a rally in a few more days at the state capitol. And this is so important to Oklevueha, it's mind-boggling. And so they've already planned us to be doing a drumming to start off before Mary, who's the president of the Timpanogos Nation. And I want to have Oklevueha, we've got sweatshirts and stuff like that, but just have at least 100 Oklevueha Native American Church people there to support Ben. Ben is just a beautiful man. So anyway, that's what that's about. We've got to protect the earth. This is our temple. And I'm not against people making money off of it, but go about it in a way that everybody has input and make it transparent instead of this. It's all about, to me, it just seems like, and the people that are proposing are good friends of mine. But they made they scooted this through without letting the public know about it. And so now the public is starting to voice, and now they want to put a suit, which is called a slap suit, which is the most illegal statement you could do. It's such a violation of the First Amendment. Anyway, I really hope that we have an incredible representation of Oklevueha Native American Church for Mary, who's the tribal chief of the Timpanogos Nation.
Beautiful. Much love, brother.
Hi, did I give you one of the sheets?
I did. I got one.
Thank you. Are you with the press? Or?
I am. I'm Standing Tall 710 on YouTube. We're live right now across the nation and the world
great.
even. So
Good.
we're trying
Thank
to get
you.
the word out to as many as we can.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your help.
Oh.
You guys need any help?
Wind noise is going to kill me. The wind is picking up, folks, so. I hope I didn't get in that shot. I apologize if I did. Wasn't trying to get in their shot. I hope I didn't. I was trying to block the wind for this. I really hope that I didn't ruin it for them. I really was. I was just trying to block the wind from my camera. I've got a bunch of people on live, so. And my mic isn't no good either. It's not got a good windsock on it, so. Yeah, they're working, so. Anyway, thank you for coming out. I don't know if you guys are hearing this or not, but that's Mrs. Abbott. She's talking about their family, the 4 kids they have, and the effect that this is having on their family. One more time with this beautiful sign.
Just really quick.
All BYU students here. All right, folks, I'm going to wander off a little bit. I'll stay live. We'll chat. Maybe I can give you all a look at what they're talking about. This is Utah Lake. We're at the boat harbor in Lindon, Utah, right by Orem. We're going to have a little bit of noise, wind noise as I turn around here. Beautiful. We love it when people wave at the camera. These pristine mountains that we have around us. The beautiful reservoir, lake, I guess they call it. All right, I need to get out of the cold, folks. I'm a little bit on the chilly side. I'm going to go back through the chat here in a second and see if I can address anything that I may have missed. I had the camera on a tripod, and so it was up above me. I couldn't see anybody as you guys was chatting. Once I get over here and get out of the wind, I'll go through and read it a little bit. Ugh. Sorry, give me just 1 second here, folks. This is the private slips, I guess, for boats. That's a great statement. You don't know what you got till it's gone. All right. Let me turn this camera around. I'll address some comments for a second.
Want to turn it on so you get some heat?
Yes, I am froze. All right, let's see what was. Maybe I can. Oh, there we go. All right. Thanks, Rose M, Ron Wade, Jamie Todd, Princess. Absolutely, we will. Sunflower Sky, Cache Valley Transparency. I appreciate all you guys joining in. It's absolutely freezing out there with that wind. Anyway, I'm going to bring this to an end. I really want to thank you all for coming and joining me, sticking with us as we
as we listen to what they had to say. I'll update the title afterwards to more reflect exactly who is involved, and I'll put it in the description. And once again, thank you all for joining me. This is Standing Tall 710 coming at you live from behind the Wasatch curtain. Thanks, folks.